Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is a pro-revenge story. So my father, let's call him Robert, owns a rental property that he's been leasing out for a while now. Around 6 months ago, he had tenants move in that seemed like decent enough folks that he figured he could trust. Well, that impression didn't last too long. Just 2.5 months into their lease, the tenants refused to pay that month's rent. Robert showed some patience and gave them an extra month's grace period to catch up on what they owed, but they still didn't pay a dime. At this point, Robert was fed up, and being 3 months behind on payments, he offered them a deal. Leave right away, and they'd only have to cover half the missed rent. But the tenants countered with their own proposal. They'd vacate while leaving the place clean and tidy, leaving behind all their furniture as compensation for the unpaid rent. Tired of the whole fiasco, Robert begrudgingly agreed to their terms. You can imagine his frustration when he showed up to find the place completely trashed, with not a single stick of furniture left behind. Not even the two couches that belonged to Robert himself, except those had been tossed haphazardly in the shed after being thoroughly wrecked. When Robert demanded they pay the full value of the missing furniture, all he got back was an empty, "we'll pay in 2 weeks" promise that he didn't believe for a second. As he pressed for quicker payment, the response was simply, "Good luck with that," followed by a string of those annoying laughing emoji things. Well, that just set Robert off. He wasn't about to let these tenants, we'll call them the Wilsons, walk all over him like that. Robert knew the head of the Wilson household worked as a pastor at a local church, while his son had some other church-related gig too. So Robert decided to lay out the whole ugly situation for the church officials. The months of unpaid rent, the stolen furniture, the completely disrespectful way the Wilsons had behaved. The church seemed quite concerned to hear about such conduct from their employees. Sure enough, the next day Robert gets a fuming phone call from the Wilson son Chris, just cussing him out, asking what the hell he thought he was doing involving the church, claiming Robert was being unfair. Robert just hung up on the ranting kid, but Chris tried calling right back at least 10 more times in a row. From what Robert could piece together, it seems the church had put its foot down with the Wilsons. If they didn't make things right with the rental situation, both the pastor father and Chris would be out of their jobs. Well, that must have lit a fire under them, because Robert got the full payment covering the missing furniture delivered that very same day. The Wilsons also agreed to back off from further harassment. Robert said later it was never really about the money. He was just appalled by their total lack of integrity and decency, especially coming from a supposed Christian family, and Robert being a church-going man himself. The next one is an entitled people story. When my wife and I bought our cozy little bungalow on Elm Street last year, we thought we had found our perfect forever home. The neighborhood was charming, the schools were excellent, and our backyard opened up into a sprawling green space that gave us privacy without isolating us from the community. For the first few months, it was idyllic, until Karen moved in next door. I knew from the moment she introduced herself that we were in for trouble. She gripped my hand with her long, manicured nails and pursed her collagen-injected lips when I politely asked her not to let her dogs do their business on our lawn. In that tense moment, I could see the entitlement swirling in her eyes. Our properties were separated by a classic white picket fence, which I had always assumed was jointly owned and maintained by both households. That belief was shattered one sunny Saturday morning when I decided to repair a few broken pickets on my side of the fence. I was whistling cheerfully, tools in hand, when Karen came barreling out of her back door. "What do you think you're doing?" she demanded, hands on her hips. I gestured to the damaged pickets. "Just fixing up our shared fence here." Karen let out a sharp, condescending laugh. "Oh, that's cute. You think this is your fence, but I own this entire thing." I stared at her, dumbfounded. "I'm sorry, what?" "This fence clearly divides both our properties." "Yes, and it's mine," she snapped. "I don't want you touching my property without permission." With that, she turned on her heel and marched back inside, leaving me shaking my head in disbelief. Who did this woman think she was? There was no way she could legally claim sole ownership of a fence straddling two properties. Over the next few weeks, I noticed Karen doing her own work on her fence, modifying and altering it to her liking. Anytime I suggested we split costs or work together, she refused outright. The absurdity of the situation frustrated me to no end. The final straw came early one Saturday when I awoke to the deafening roar of a chainsaw. I bolted outside in my pajamas to find Karen cheerfully slicing through her fence, dismantling the entire structure. "What in God's name are you doing?" I cried out. "Oh, good morning," Karen trilled, as if she wasn't ruining my peaceful weekend. "I'm just redoing my fence to get rid of those horrid pickets. Much too lower class for my taste." I stared open-mouthed at the gaping holes in the fence, barely able to form a coherent thought. Karen took my stunned silence as an opportunity to prattle on about her exciting new wrought iron and brick design. Finally, I snapped. "This is insane. You can't unilaterally decide to destroy a fence dividing our properties. I'm calling my lawyer." Karen simply giggled and waved her manicured hand dismissively. "Go ahead. I'll enjoy watching you waste your money." True to my word, I phoned my lawyer, explained the ridiculous situation, and asked her to intervene legally. She reassured me that Karen didn't have a leg to stand on, but suggested getting an official land survey done of both properties to cement the facts. I scheduled one for Monday morning. The surveyor arrived bright and early, tools in tow. I watched anxiously as he examined the property line markers and took precise measurements. Karen stood smugly on her front porch, clearly unconcerned by the proceedings. It didn't take long for the surveyor to finish his assessment. As he packed up his equipment, I caught a telling gleam in his eye and knew Karen's charade was about to come crashing down. "Well, the results are clear," he announced. "The fence is exactly on the property line, meaning it borders both lots. You each own and are responsible for one side." I couldn't help but smirk at the shocked expression on Karen's face. She stammered illegibly for a few moments before catching herself and attempting to regain her composure. "That's ridiculous," she sputtered. "This is my fence, and I'll do as I damn well please with it." Armed with the land survey results, my lawyer sent Karen a sternly worded letter making it unequivocally clear that she had no legal right to the entirety of the fence. Karen, of course, sent an unhinged 5-page response insisting the lawyer didn't know what she was talking about. I decided it was time to let the courts sort this out once and for all. With my lawyer's help, I filed a lawsuit against Karen seeking recognition of my partial ownership of the fence based on the land survey. I also requested an injunction to prevent her from further modifying or damaging the fence until the case was resolved. Karen showed up to court dressed in an ostentatious designer outfit and enough jewelry to sink the Titanic. She had some fancy big-shot lawyer by her side, an older gentleman who looked like he charged more per hour than I made in a week. As the hearing kicked off, Karen's lawyer passionately argued that the fence belonged solely to his client. He kept referring to her meticulous record-keeping and presented heavily edited photographs showing only her side of the fence. Then it was my lawyer's turn. She calmly presented the land survey and historical documentation proving the fence was erected 2 years before either of us bought our homes. "Your Honor, this clearly indicates a shared structure on the property line, not one belonging to my client or the defendant exclusively," she reasoned. The judge peered thoughtfully over his glasses. I held my breath. "Based on the evidence, I have no choice but to rule in favor of the plaintiff," he finally declared. "The fence belongs jointly to both parties, and the defendant is barred from altering it without agreement." Karen looked ready to explode, turning an unnatural shade of raging red. I forced myself to keep a neutral expression as the euphoric rush of sweet, sweet justice coursed through me. As we left court, Karen glared daggers at me, snarling under her breath about suing me for emotional damages. I simply smiled and cheerfully told her to have a nice day. The fence debacle was finally over, but something told me this wouldn't be the last of the dramatics with Karen. As I pulled into my driveway, I made a mental note to send my lawyer a giant gift basket. I had a feeling I'd be needing her again soon. The next one is a petty revenge story. So there was this event at a bar that I was planning to go to this weekend, and I asked this guy to be my date that night, as I don't like being alone in crowded, unfamiliar places. At first he seemed quite enthusiastic as he messaged me a lot about it. One time, he causally mentioned how expensive going out in NYC has become, which is true BTW. I went, "No worry, I will pick up the tab and we will have a good time." I genuinely did not think of it as a big deal since I am not the most frugal person in the world. So the night before our supposed date, I wanted to confirm everything and messaged him that we can also grab something to eat beforehand. What kind of food do you like? He got back to me saying there is a sushi place in Queens he wants to try. Initially, I was struck this being bizarre as the bar is in the West Village, and if we do what he wants, I'd have to forfeit most of the night to be in Queens. and the only reason why we are even hanging out is because I wanted to go to this bar. So I made a logical response, suggesting we could get something else near the bar. He became unresponsive. When I pressed for a confirmation from him for the itinerary, he said he needed to think about it. At this point, I'd realize he really takes me for a meal ticket. He's trying to get me capitulated to his demands, as it's already Friday night, and I am running out of options of people still free and available, which as matter of fact I was. He really derailed my plan, and I pulled out my phone and booked myself a $400 17-course omakase at a very nice place in the village. I had blast with the insanely delicious meal, and I posted the picture of the sushi to my Instagram stories. He messaged me later claiming he's sorry and he got busy with family, blah blah blah. I blocked him immediately. The next one is a malicious compliance story. A few years ago I got a new phone. I let the vendor set all of the notifications since I wasn't and still am not really into phones, talking or texting, and it seemed easier to let him do it. At the time I had a desk job and I would set my alarm to go off to remind me to do some walking during my breaks. Otherwise I would sit all day and have noodle legs while trying to get home at the end of the day. So the day after I bought my phone, I go to work. Morning break, I remembered without needing the alarm, so I shut it down before it could sound off. Lunch comes and goes. So then it gets to be late afternoon. My office partner and I are in our after-lunch slowdown. Not quite sleepy, but less than alert. Then my phone alarm goes off. After office partner and I peeled ourselves off the ceiling, I frantically pawed at the phone for a while before finding the shutoff for the alarm. The vendor had set all the notifications to Reveille. You know, the Army wake-up trumpet song. I apologized to my office partner over and over again. WTF, Condessa? TF. And let him watch while I figured out how to change all of the notification settings to something less alarming. I set it to crickets. I thought the sound was annoying enough to get me up and walking, and nobody is afraid of crickets, so I was safe there. Or so I thought. Office partner and I got a kick out of telling that story every chance we got, and it always got a laugh. Until one Friday evening I was leaving late, in the elevator with some other stragglers, and I get one of my rare texts. Granted, it sounded really loud in that tiny elevator, but I was shocked to see mean girl sneers on everyone's faces. One of the ladies says, "That's your ringtone?" Yes. And I tell the story of how it came to be the default and end with, "Because nobody is afraid of crickets." More sneers and a sulky, "Some people are afraid of crickets," from the back. Then the one who spoke up, I guess she was the leader or whatever, begins to tell me how to change the volume and ringtone so as not to upset others. I'm not a phone person, so I would have been fine with that. The problem was that she added condescending to the sneer. That opened it up for the rest of the women to ramp up the sneers and condescending remarks. I basically shut down at that point because watching a bunch of 30-somethings turn into high school mean girls was freaking me out. Over a ringtone. Monday morning rolls around and I get called into my supervisor's office. She looked very, very embarrassed. So embarrassed that it took her a few tries to get out what she had to say. Apparently the mean girls had complained to their boss about my vile ringtone and insisted that she do something about it. She complained to my boss, and my boss had lower seniority. She basically apologized for making me change my ringtone. So I went back to my office and told office partner the whole story. We stared at each other for a few moments before we started laughing. "I know what you are going to do, Condessa. Go for it." Then I changed all of the notifications back to Reveille. The next one is an entitled people story. I was on a date with this girl who'd been great so far. It was our third time out. We were going to a concert. I was driving. It was going really well, and we were ahead of schedule when we witnessed a car accident. Car A was stopped at a green. No hazards or turn signal or anything oncoming towards them. Just sitting there. A green to red to green cycle occurs, so it's a fresh green. The car directly behind car A, car B, gives a polite honk to car A. Nothing happens. The light turns red again. On the next green, car B drives around car A. Just as car B goes to drive around, car A turns no signal and smashes into car B. Car B comes to a stop. Car A drives off. I immediately got out and went to check on car B's driver. His car was banged up pretty good, but thank God he was fine. Other good Samaritans had stopped by this point and were helping to attend to car B and making sure nobody ran into him while he was stopped, so I went back to move my car somewhere safe. First, though, I said to the girl I was driving with, "I guess we better call cops and let the police know about all this." and she said, appalled, "Don't do that. You said he's fine. Let's just go." I couldn't believe she was so fixated on us making the concert that she was suggesting we just skip out on the scene of an accident. I figured I'd get my car off the road, then assess the situation. There was too much going on at once. I hoped I must be misunderstanding her. I found a suitable place to pull off, and when I'd come back, police had already arrived. I was hanging around waiting to talk to them. One told me they'd want to take my statement in a bit, but I'd already figured as much. I was overhearing them talking to Car B's driver, and they asked if he had a dash cam or anything like that. That's when I remembered. I have a dash cam. I hadn't thought of it because I wasn't driving my usual car. My brother let me borrow his for the date. My driving us both to the concert was last minute when she suggested we both go together to save on parking. I offered to do it, trying to be a gentleman. But my car's a pigsty, and I didn't have time to properly clean it. I wanted to make a decent first impression, so my brother's car was the backup. I went to the car to pop the camera off its holder. I wasn't sure how to extract the video's data, but figured they'd know. The girl I was with asked me what I was doing, and pretty excited about the whole thing. I explained I'd probably captured the incident with the dash cam, so I was going to bring it over to the police. She grabbed my wrist, with force. Gripped my wrist is more like it, and yanked me back into the front seat. I thought maybe another car was coming or something. She gave me a heart attack. "You can't do that!" she gasped, like I'd told her I was going to ram the guy a second time for some insurance money of my own. "Let's just go," she insisted. I couldn't believe it. That was a total turn-off for me. One of the things that had most attracted me to the girl in the first place was her compassion for others, service-oriented profession, and seemingly deep capacity for empathy. This was out of left field. I told her we had to stay around until the crash had been resolved, since we were witnesses. The police would want to talk to me, probably her too. She emphasized again, "You can't do that." "What? Do what?" I asked, trying to figure out what I was missing. "You can't talk to the police," she said like it was cancerous. Still confused, I thought she meant I shouldn't insert myself into an active crime scene or whatever, so I explained the police had already let me know while I was over there that they'd definitely want my statement. She goes, "You, a white male, are just going to cooperate with police? Of course." First of all, she's white. Second of all, the driver of Car B was black. I gave up on trying to understand and told her, "I think I'm probably missing something here." And she replied, "Yeah, about 3 centuries of systemic marginalization and oppression." I felt like I was reading a hoax article in the New York Post. I told her the obvious, that the impacted driver was black and probably wanted the incriminating dashcam footage of the person who hit his car. She has the nerve to go, "He doesn't know what he wants. He's probably too scared. You have to help him." I was having trouble computing what she'd said, and I was still pretty excited that I had dashcam footage. So I told her the police had already let me know I had to give a statement, so I was pretty sure leaving at that point would be illegal, but that I'd be right back. I mean, she couldn't get mad at me for following the law, right? Wrong. When I got back, she was gone. Haven't heard from her since. Even after I reached out to be sure she made it home okay. Probably for the best we didn't make it any further. The next one is an entitled parent story. Today is my birthday, and my entitled mom texted me congratulating me for it. I'm not going to reply her back. I could tell you the whole story of what she did to me, but I will summarize it in this post. She cheated on my father with the person who would be the future father of my half-siblings. After that, she has almost never been present in my life. She never came to visit me, not even on my birthdays. And on my birthdays, she only called me to congratulate me, and nothing else. And there are times when she didn't even call me on some birthdays. She pays much more attention to my half-siblings than me for as long as I can remember. She has been present at their birthdays, at their school activities. She has taken them for walks, while she has not done anything like that with me. She disappeared from my life for almost my entire adolescence, and when she finally contacted me again when I was 19 years old, and we tried to be more united, a friend of hers saw me, and when that friend asked her who I was, she told him that I was the son of the babysitter who took care of my younger half-siblings. BTW, this last thing destroyed me emotionally. After the incident with her friend, I confronted her, and she, very angry, told me that she did not have to tell people about her private life, which made me very angry, and since then I decided to go no contact with her. And now she sent me a message for my birthday again. Honestly, I know she is my mother and the woman who gave me life, but I am pretty sure that I hate her. I'm not going to answer her back after all the pain she put me through. Fortunately, my father and my stepmother, who I consider as my real mother, are here for me. They support me, and thanks to them, I can cope with this pain. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.